What could make a legendary voice finally break decades of silence? For years, Linda Ronstadt stood untouchable, graceful, and scandal-free. But at 78, everything changes. A single name on a set list triggered a shocking walkout, leaving everyone stunned. Now she's revealing the truth behind the betrayal that haunted her career. Don Henley was once just a quiet drummer in Linda Ronstadt's band, standing in the background while her voice commanded sold-out arenas in the early 1970s. At that time, Linda was already a rising force, shaping the sound of rock and country crossover, while Henley was gaining visibility simply by being part of her orbit. She gave him exposure, a platform, and a front-row seat to success. But everything changed when he co-founded the Eagles. As the band skyrocketed to global fame, the dynamic between them shifted dramatically. Gratitude seemed to disappear, replaced by a growing sense of ego and distance. By the mid-1970s, Henley was no longer the reserved musician he once appeared to be. With the Eagles dominating charts and redefining American rock, he began to carry himself with a confidence that, to Linda, crossed into arrogance. The breaking point came backstage in 1975 at the Universal Amphitheater. In a moment that would leave a lasting scar, Henley reportedly mocked her musical identity, suggesting she should stick to singing other people's songs and leave songwriting to real artists. It wasn't just criticism. It was deeply personal, dismissing years of hard work, artistry, and influence. Linda didn't argue. She didn't create a public scene. Instead, she acted decisively, cutting him off professionally and revoking his access to her tour. That moment marked the end of any remaining trust between them. Over time, stories circulated within the industry about Henley's increasingly dominant personality. But for Linda, the real damage was the loss of respect from someone she had once supported. Today, Don Henley remains a celebrated figure in music history, yet this chapter reveals a more complicated legacy behind the fame. Frank Zappa brought a different kind of conflict into Linda Ronstadt's career, one rooted in creative tension rather than public spectacle. In 1974, their collaboration looked promising on paper. Zappa was already celebrated for his experimental genius and fearless approach to music, while Linda was quickly becoming one of the most versatile and powerful vocalists in the industry. Together, they seemed poised to create something bold and original. But that promise didn't last long once they stepped into the studio. From the very beginning, the atmosphere felt strained. Linda arrived with enthusiasm, ready to explore Zappa's material and contribute her own ideas. Instead, she was met with resistance. Zappa reportedly dismissed her input with a sharp, almost mocking tone, criticizing her sound as too polished and commercial for his vision. Rather than building a collaborative environment, he positioned himself as the sole authority, leaving little room for creative exchange. The situation escalated during a rehearsal when Zappa suddenly stopped the session. In front of the entire room, he made a cutting remark suggesting that giving serious music to a pop singer would inevitably water it down. The comment landed hard. For Linda, it wasn't just artistic criticism, it was a public humiliation that questioned her credibility and years of dedication. She didn't argue or defend herself. Instead, Linda chose dignity. Quietly, she packed up her things and walked out, ending the collaboration immediately. She never returned, and the project was abandoned without resolution. Those close to her later shared that while she respected Zappa's brilliance, she viewed him as harsh and impossible to trust creatively, leaving behind a lasting impression. Jim Morrison entered Linda Ronstadt's story not as a collaborator, but as a chaotic force that left a lasting emotional mark. It was 1968, during the height of the rock and roll explosion, when Morrison, already known for his unpredictable behavior as the frontman of The Doors, crossed a line that Linda would never forget. At an after-party near the Whiskey A Go-Go, a place filled with rising stars and industry insiders, the atmosphere was electric but volatile. Morrison, visibly intoxicated, spotted Linda in the crowd and, without warning, pulled her onto a makeshift stage. What followed wasn't charming spontaneity, it was reckless and invasive. In front of stunned onlookers, Morrison attempted to kiss her. Linda instinctively pulled away, maintaining her composure, but the moment was deeply unsettling. As he lost balance, he stumbled into her microphone stand, nearly knocking over the setup. The room fell silent, unsure whether to laugh or react. The incident quickly became a whispered legend in music circles, but at the time, Linda chose not to speak publicly about it. The situation worsened months later when Morrison, during a radio interview, dismissed her with cutting remarks, calling her sweet but spineless. For Linda, the insult wasn't just personal. It reflected a broader culture of disrespect toward women in the industry. She never responded publicly, staying true to her reserved image, but privately she described him as brilliant yet destructive, someone whose talent was overshadowed by his lack of control. Today, Jim Morrison remains an iconic figure in rock history, often remembered for his poetic lyrics and rebellious spirit. However, moments like this reveal the darker side of that legacy, one marked by behavior that crossed boundaries and left others to deal with the consequences. Neil Young seemed like the perfect ally in Linda Ronstadt's world, especially when music and activism came together for a shared cause. In 1976, both artists appeared at a benefit concert supporting farm workers, an event meant to unite powerful voices for social change. On the surface, they stood for the same ideals, respected musicians using their influence to make a difference. But behind the scenes, the harmony quickly unraveled. During rehearsals, tensions began to rise as creative differences surfaced. Linda, known for her strong musical instincts and collaborative spirit, suggested adjustments to the set that she believed would elevate the performance. Neil Young, however, reportedly dismissed her input without consideration. He controlled the direction of the show, shutting down her ideas and leaving little room for compromise. What should have been a partnership turned into a one-sided dynamic where Linda felt increasingly pushed aside. The situation escalated after the concert ended. In comments that circulated through the press, Young allegedly criticized her style, calling it too commercial and implying she lacked the authenticity required for protest music. For Linda, the words cut deeply. This wasn't just about artistic disagreement. It was a public questioning of her values and sincerity. She had supported the cause wholeheartedly, only to be undermined by someone she believed shared her vision. True to her nature, Linda did not respond publicly. She chose silence over confrontation, maintaining her composure in the face of criticism. But privately, the experience left a lasting impact. It reshaped how she viewed collaboration, especially within movements that claimed unity. From that point forward, she made the quiet but firm decision never to perform alongside Neil Young again, carrying the lesson with her long after the stage lights faded. David Crosby was once more than just a fellow musician in Linda Ronstadt's life. He was someone she considered part of her inner circle during the golden era of Laurel Canyon. In those early years, their connection was built on shared creativity and mutual respect. Their voices blended effortlessly, and their collaboration reflected the spirit of a generation redefining American music. But by the late 1970s, that harmony began to fracture. The turning point came in 1978 during a vocal session for a joint project. What started as a routine disagreement quickly escalated. Linda requested a simple key change to better suit her vocal range, a reasonable adjustment for any professional singer. Crosby, however, dismissed her suggestion outright, telling her she needed to adapt instead. The comment may have seemed minor on the surface, but it struck at something deeper, a lack of respect for her artistry and experience. Tensions grew and the conflict didn't stay behind studio doors. Their disagreement spilled into the public eye, becoming one of the most talked-about clashes in the music scene at the time. Crosby went further, making remarks in the press that described Linda as manufactured, implying her success was more image than authenticity. For Linda, who had built her career on raw talent and relentless work, the accusation cut deeply. True to her nature, she didn't respond publicly. Instead, she made a quiet but firm decision. Behind the scenes, she distanced herself completely. Crosby's name was no longer welcome in her circle, his music removed from her environment as if he no longer existed. Today, David Crosby is remembered as a legendary voice in rock history. But for Linda, his betrayal marked the end of both a friendship and a shared musical trust. Paul Simon seemed like the perfect artistic match for Linda Ronstadt, a collaboration that, on paper, promised something timeless. By the early 1980s, both artists were already icons. Simon was revered for his songwriting genius, while Linda was celebrated for her powerful, expressive voice and genre-defying success. Fans and industry insiders expected magic when they came together in 1982. Instead, what unfolded behind studio doors became one of her most disheartening experiences. From the very beginning, the sessions felt unbalanced. Simon, known for his meticulous and often controlling approach, began directing every detail. Linda found herself repeatedly interrupted during recordings, with Simon correcting her phrasing and delivery in ways that felt more critical than collaborative. What should have been a shared creative space quickly turned into something rigid and one-sided. The tension grew as Simon reportedly rewrote parts of the material without consulting her, leaving Linda feeling sidelined in a project she was meant to help shape. Instead of two artists blending their strengths, the dynamic became about control versus expression. For someone who had built her career on authenticity and emotional connection, the experience felt stifling. The collaboration never reached completion. The track they worked on was ultimately shelved, never released to the public. But the emotional impact stayed with Linda long after the session ended. She walked away feeling diminished, as though her voice and legacy had been overlooked. As always, she chose not to speak publicly about the situation. However, she made a quiet, firm decision never to work with Paul Simon again. Today, he remains one of music's most respected figures, but for Linda, that experience marked a turning point in how she defined creative trust. Elvis Costello entered Linda Ronstadt's story at a moment when she was already at the peak of her success, a proven powerhouse with chart-topping hits and sold-out performances across the country. In 1979, during a major music event in Cleveland, the atmosphere was charged with excitement, bringing together established icons and rising stars. Costello, known for his sharp wit and rebellious punk edge, was quickly gaining attention for his bold personality as much as his music. But what happened that night crossed a line Linda would never forget. In front of reporters, Costello made a cutting remark about Linda, dismissing her performance as nothing more than background music for a casual brunch. It wasn't just criticism, it felt calculated, a public attempt to diminish her credibility at the height of her career. The comment spread quickly through the music scene, amplifying the humiliation. For Linda, who had spent years earning respect in a male-dominated industry, the insult struck at her identity as an artist. She didn't respond publicly, maintaining the composed image she was known for. But the impact lingered. Later, when she encountered Costello backstage, there was a brief moment where an apology might have been possible. Instead, reports suggest he doubled down, delivering another cold remark before walking away without remorse. That moment confirmed everything for her. Privately, Linda viewed him as part of a new wave of musicians, intelligent and daring, but often lacking empathy. His words didn't just offend, they symbolized a shift in the industry toward sharper, more cynical criticism. Today, Elvis Costello is widely respected as an influential songwriter, but for Linda, that encounter remained a lasting reminder that talent without respect can leave the deepest wounds. After decades of silence, Linda Ronstadt finally revealed the truth behind the fame, the betrayals, and the strength it took to endure it all. Her story isn't about revenge, it's about resilience, dignity, and knowing your worth in a world that often tests it. Behind every legendary voice is a journey few truly understand. Now it's your turn. Which story shocked you the most? And do you think she was right to stay silent all those years? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like if this moved you, share with others, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.